Welcome back to another episode of the HigherUp podcast. I'm your host, Michael Smoke, and today we are joined by a very special guest. He has over 2 decades of experience as the lead crisis negotiator and member of the Joint Terrorist Task Force team for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He's also the author of a nationwide bestseller book titled Never Split the Difference, which has sold over 3 million copies worldwide. Oh, and in his spare time, he does a little teaching at 2 of the most prestigious universities in the country, in Georgetown and Harvard. Mr. Chris Voss, thank you for being here. Can't tell you what it means to me.
Yeah, Michael, an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. The pleasure is truly, truly all mine. I love this quote from you. A woman wants her husband to wear black shoes, but her husband prefers brown shoes. So what do? They compromise. They meet halfway. He wears one black shoe and one brown shoe. That is the worst possible outcome. Next time you want to compromise, remember those mismatched shoes. So I love that quote from the book because it epitomizes the thesis of your idea here. Never split the difference. Why is it so important to truly never split the difference? And what are the downsides of true compromise? Something that is so rooted in our culture, even in marriage.
Right.
You're taught to compromise. What's actually wrong with that?
Yeah, well, it's funny how that context comes out, because then if I say to you, you're willing to compromise your principles, like, no, that's bad. So how's compromise good? And then we're beating the hell out of compromise here. Like, if compromise was good, we would all love our politicians. We would say, like, wow, those guys in Washington, wow, what a great job they've always done. Like, nobody says that. So why as a theory does it sound like we're trying to be collaborative? So first of all, we should be collaborative, and that's not compromise. So it's a good idea to be collaborative. Now, the real fundamental problems with compromise are it's impossible to be, quote, fair, because we're human. 2002-ish, Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in Behavioral Economics for something called prospect theory. So if it's a Nobel Prize, it probably applies to humanity, not just Americans. Or Daniel Kahneman is Israeli Jew. It's not just Jewish people. It's not just Israelis. It's not just psychologists. It's humans. And one of the essence of a main point is lost things twice as much as an equivalent gain. So if I offer to I got a good heart, you got a good heart. I offer to compromise, meet in the middle. If I give in by 5, because I'm human, I'm going to feel like I gave in by 10. And I'm not going to be good with the deal. And I'm either not going to perform fully on the agreement, or I'm going to find a way to drag my feet, interfere, grab something else along the way till I feel even. Now, what happens to you when I do that to you? First of all, you already felt like you gave in more than you got. And secondly, now I'm dragging my feet. I'm nickel and diming you. I'm getting you here and there. And then it just it's a recipe for a guaranteed downward spiral. That's the problem with compromise. It's guaranteed downward spiral dissatisfaction. Now, there's some people out there that say a sign of a good negotiation when both sides are a little unhappy. Well, I use close relationships as a great analogy for negotiation. A great, good negotiation, the other side feels heard, respected, and you prosper long term. So yes, you can negotiate with your spouse, your significant other, your love, your committed relationship. You want to involve a strategy where you're both unhappy? If that's a good negotiation, and you put it like that, it sounds stupid. Like, why do I want to have an approach in a relationship where I guarantee we're both unhappy? And when you begin to think it through and see how it actually plays out in real life, then you realize that compromise is a bad idea.
And so where my mind goes is, and Chris, I want to take a brief pause here. I'll edit this out. But are you getting feedback of hearing me twice in your ears, or
I
do I
am
just
not.
sound normal?
No.
Okay, okay, then I'm going to assume I'm getting a bit of feedback from somewhere that I'm hearing myself. I'll edit this out. I just want to make sure it's not there in post because I'll be heartbroken if we get done and the audio is bad.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not hearing it at all.
Okay, beautiful. I'll chop that. But where my mind goes is that sounds great in theory. It sounds great to say never compromise, never walk away feeling unfulfilled if you do. But how do we actually do that? And I love that you brought up romantic relationships because this is the root of cultural compromise in America. A marriage is
Mhm.
all about compromise. So you are going against the grain in its purest form here. So how does one actually do that? How does one meet their goals or advance their goals while meeting their counterparts' needs in a negotiation? Because that's what every conversation is in that realm.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is how do our decisions are emotional. I mean, it sounds crazy. There's no such thing as a rational decision. You make your decisions based on what you care about, which makes decision making by definition emotional. To start with, I mean, that's really hard for some people to wrap their minds around. And well, yeah, everybody else around me emotional, but I'm reasonable. What I want makes sense. So to start with, people have an inner need to feel heard. And so you get a long way just making somebody feel heard. And it's not saying, I understand. In many cases, it's saying to them, all right, so this is why this is important to you. Bang, lay it out. You could even say, before I disagree, here's how you see things. That's so when somebody feels heard, what happens is they feel like you have their back. They feel like they could trust you. There's a bunch of neurochemical things that happen. They bond with you. They're more likely to tell you the truth. And when somebody feels heard, they get a hit of this wonderful neurochemical called serotonin, which is satisfaction, which is they're less demanding. They want less. And oftentimes people start asking for stuff because they felt slighted about something else. There was this other thing that happened and I didn't feel like I got it. So consequently, I'm going to be more demanding now. You start realizing that feelings are starting to show up all over the place. Simple feelings of appreciation. I'm in a committed relationship. If at the end of the day, when I'm trying to go to sleep, my significant other, my girlfriend, wants to talk, then what happened was throughout the course of the day, she didn't get any attention in tiny little ways. And emotions, slights, misunderstandings tend to accumulate and then they manifest themselves on the other end. So it's more an issue of me, of occasional appreciation throughout the course of the day. In a committed relationship, the other side wants to be appreciated. As heterosexual males, we have a tendency to make a big deal out of this as women, because that's the vast majority of what we see as our experience. But in point of fact, it's whoever's on the other side in a committed relationship. It doesn't. This is gender agnostic. This is traditional relationship agnostic because this is about human beings, and whoever's on the other side of the relationship is a human being. So the little things that accumulate throughout the day have a tendency to manifest themselves negatively further on down the line. Now, this is the case of your business relationships, people you work with, for, or who work for you. This is human beings. So you get a long way. This is a long way of saying you get a long way just by making somebody feel heard. In many cases, that's all they need. In my estimation, in any given negotiation, making the other side totally feeling heard. Again, it's you understanding is inadequate. They have to hear what you understand to feel heard. And you can't say, I understand, because they didn't hear what you understood. But when somebody feels heard and they say to you, that's right, 50% of the disagreements go away on the spot. no less than 30%. More of a batting average, but I'll mark it low. Only 30% go away on the spot. Boom. All right, so 30% of your arguments are gone. To start with, that ain't bad. Then the follow-on is every time the other side draws closer to you. So that if it didn't solve the problem, the distance that has to be covered now is vastly diminished by the amount of distance that was put in there by their feelings of having lost with you or with somebody else. You know, I'll be more demanding of someone if I'm mad at somebody else. My significant relationship, if I'm annoyed at the people that I had to interact with through the course of the day, I'm taking it out on a person I'm interacting with at the end of the day. There's an accumulation of slights and feelings that happen in all of us, and the person that's on the receiving end of them may have had nothing to do with how they got there. And so your job is to sort of sort out, you know, what am I on the hook for? What just happened to happen to them through the course of the day? Some of it happened during the course of the day. If I'm just a good sounding board for them on that, now bang, you can see why 30% of this is just going to go away on the spot once somebody feels hurt.
Wow.
So it's kind of a magic wand in many cases.
So just the simple phrase of getting, and you talk about this in the book, getting someone to say, that's right, not you're right,
Yeah.
is a huge conflict dissolve. 30%, and like you said, if 30%, the best hitter that ever lived only batted 300. It's a pretty good batting average.
That ain't a bad
30%
batting
of the
average.
time.
Yeah.
And so a reduction by 30% just from someone feeling heard. What is the significance of that's right versus you're right? Is it just they know in their subconscious mind with the serotonin hit that they are understood by the counterpart?
Yeah. You're right. Somebody's always giving you the hand a little bit in some fashion. You know, I have never seen you're right delivered with there wasn't some buried grudge, begrudge, you know, reluctance, unsatisfied feeling. I've never heard it. And you're right will either be, you know, all right, look, you're right.
Mm,
That's reluctance. You know, that's buried resentment, misgivings somewhere in that. The way that's said, I've never not heard that. Now the problem with the person hearing it is like they love it. They're like, oh wow, you know, everything's wonderful. You know, I win. You know, I'm getting ready to stand on a podium, and they completely ignore or are oblivious to the fact that there's at least some misgivings, resentment buried in that answer, if not a massive amount of misgivings, and they're just trying to get you to shut up.
yeah.
Again, personal relationships, spouses on both sides are great at getting their way by saying to the other person, "You're right," and the other person's so happy they don't realize you don't have an agreement. You know, you got somebody telling you, "Please stop talking." So you're
Yeah.
right is a trap that so many people fall into and simultaneously use, which is hysterical to me. That you fall into the trap that you set for others all the time. So that's your
Is
right. Now, go ahead. I know you got a question on your mind.
yeah, is there a way to get to the that's right more quickly in a conversation?
Yeah, well, all right. So that's right is what people say when what you just said is the truth. Like it's not your truth, it's the truth, which means they're bought in. And so what I typically do is, you know, I'll go to the extremes, whether it's characterizing a negative, not denying it, but characterizing it. Like I'll say if something's going to make you unhappy, I'm getting ready to say it to you. I'll say, you know what? As soon as I get done telling you this, you're going to want to stab me in the eye with a pen. You know, that's over characterizing your negative reaction. So I get to it more quickly by just not pulling my punches. And you see me as a complete jerk. you see me as somebody who's let you down every step of the way. Nobody ever says, "Oh, well, I didn't think that before, but now that you mention it, I do." That's never what happens. Never. Um, and getting your mind around that is as hostage negotiators in the FBI might, and law enforcement. My partner, Derek Gaunt, was this is a line that he uses all the time because we learn crisis intervention in law enforcement, and we're supposed to ask him flat out, are you going to kill yourself? Now, the first time you taught that, I said, you are horrified, horrified. And Derek says, you're always afraid the guy on the other side is going to say, well, I wasn't, but now that you mention it, I'm going up to the roof now. I'll see you on the way down. I mean, that's what we think is going to happen in our head. But that's the most extreme example of calling out a negative. And in point of fact, in that context, a person on the other side is either going to go like, no. And they're kind of like, they think you're stupid. They're almost insulted that you would even think that. Awesome. I just confirmed. Or if they were thinking it, they're happy you brought it out in the open. You understand. That's a demonstration of understanding. You're aware. You weren't scared of it. You called it out. So in our personal lives, how do I get to a that's right quicker? Like I go in hard, as fast. I don't leave stuff out. And I have a tendency, I listen very carefully. I'm paraphrasing back to people. I'm interviewing a guy, CEO, co-CEO, founder. It's a phenomenal law firm called Even Up Law. They're a unicorn company defending the little guy against the insurance companies, against the monstrosities that we're all up against in these battles. And I'm talking to him about his employees, and he's got this great pride in who they are and what they're capable of. So I'm kind of feeling him out, and I say, you want to be listed as one of the best places to work in the entire United States. And he's kind of like, not really. And I say, oh, what you want is people who actually want to climb Mount Everest. You don't want people who say they do, but don't want to do the work. You want the people that will actually climb Everest. And he says, that's right.
And you got it right there. You got that
Yeah.
30% reduction in the gap.
Yeah. Or he felt understood. And, part of my example is to point out how if I throw something out that's not exactly right, if that's what I'm trying to get, I'm not trying to convince. I'm trying to demonstrate. I'm trying to make him feel understood. I'll miss, but that miss is information. And then I'll take my miss and his reaction to it, and I'll go back and try again. I missed the bullseye, but the guy behind the target gave me a reaction, and it helps me see that I missed, and I could dial in. And so part of it is don't be afraid of being wrong, because if you're really trying, they'll guide you in.
Yeah. Yeah. The data gives you the opportunity to course correct your crosshairs and get a little closer.
Well said. That's right.
Is there is there a case that stands out to you in your career where, because so deeply in our human essence, no matter the situation, all we want is to be heard and understood. So knowing that, is there a case that stands out to you where it was very hard for you not to let your own emotions get in the way? Like this piece of trash, this guy on the other end of the phone, I still got to make him feel like he just wants to be heard so he can say that's right so we can get this done. Has that ever been particularly hard?
I can't think of a specific instance off the top of my head. I will tell you that what I struggle with is when I know somebody's manipulating me. So like in my professional career, I encourage people to walk away. If I refer to them as the 7%ers. What do I mean by a 7%er? Hostage negotiators effective roughly 93% of the time. I know the percentage is actually slightly higher than that, but I tend to round down. So for hostage negotiators successful 93% of the time, 7% of the time, nobody's coming out. This deal ain't happening. Bad guys got to kill people. That you have to accept the reality. What does that mean in hostage negotiation? If he's in there, hopefully he's in there by himself, because there's no innocent life at risk. There are hostages inside, and he's gonna kill somebody. He's gonna. We gotta. That's the SWAT team's job to fix this now. It's out of my hands. There's gonna be an assault. There's something, but it ain't happening. It's not gonna be a negotiated deal. So I hand it off to the SWAT team, and it's their job to do what they got to do. Maybe, I talk the guy to the window. What's the flip side of business? You're looking for the 7%er early on, or a personal relationship, and then you're out. You don't make the deal. You recognize them as someone that you will never reconcile with in a way that is not painful. A business deal is blood money. It's a personal relationship. It's just somebody diminishing who you are every step of the way, not wanting the best for you. And then get out. Terminate respectfully. And we look for these people in our business dealings all the time. You come to work for me as a salesperson, you're supposed to make deals on my behalf. First thing I got to let you know is I don't expect you to make all the deals. There's 7%ers out there. They're going to waste our time. They're going to suck the life out of us. 93% of the planet wants to do business with us in a productive, positive way. Here, I want your gut instinct is going to tell you who these are. I'm going to give you some specific tools. Don't make that deal. Walk away. We don't have to hand it to a SWAT team. In the business world, personal life, we respectfully terminate the deal.
So what are you looking for? What's the giveaway? What's the red flag that you go, this is a 7%er, we gotta walk. There's not gonna work.
Yeah, and a couple different things. Typically, if it's a business deal, somebody's really focused on one aspect of the deal. They're overly focused on price, typically. The shoppiness. If you don't know who the fool in the game is, it's probably you. And I know enough about human decision making, plus I've studied it. I read buyers' surveys all the time. And the nature of the human decision-making process. If I'm thinking about buying a car, I don't jump in my truck and drive straight down to the Toyota dealership and say, what car should I buy, and buy what he told me to buy. The process is I do a little research first. I want to ask somebody about it, somebody I trust, but I don't want to sound stupid, so I'm going to do some research. If it's a car, I'm reading J.D. Power surveys. I Google reviews of. Then I pick out what reviews. And I start getting smart. Now then I start talking to casual acquaintances, because I'm less embarrassed about feeling uninformed in front of them. I'm still gathering data. Now I'm going to talk to people that I trust, who may or may not be, I have a close personal relationship with. When my mother was alive, I trust my mom, but she don't know nothing about cars, so I'm not going to ask her what kind of car I should buy.
Right.
She can tell me what she likes to buy. What's the point? Before I talk to the person who's the provider of the service or the item, my mind is at least 50% of the way made up. Now, I'm going to talk to other car dealers to get a better price, to hammer the first guy with. If I'm buying a brand new vehicle, I'm buying it from a dealership, I'm going to do, who's close to me, what's convenient for me, what are the reviews of that dealership. I'm in a pretty good idea I want to buy from that dealership. I'm going to go to somebody else, get a better price. I'm going to go to a Toyota dealer that's twice as far. I'm going
Hmm.
to hammer this poor schmuck for a low price because I want to buy from the dealer that's close to me because he's more convenient. So then you start to realize that when you're engaged in negotiations, there's a fool in the game. You're either getting shopped against or you're getting shopped. And there will be great indicators of that up front if they're overly focused on a price. And we tell people to actually say to them, sounds like you're still shopping around. And shockingly, they will tell you. I got another guy, longtime sales champion. He'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do we rank as being your preferred provider? And if they hesitate and they give you a number any less than 9, because in their head they're going to be like, oh, well, the number is 0. I'm going to insult them if I don't give them at least a 4. Give them hope. You know, that Robin Williams routine about golf. Put a flag down there just to give you hope. You know, if they hesitate, if they don't give you 9, you're being shocked. And he asked that right up front, too, by the way. This is a conversation not after having spent hours, days, 4 hours on a golf course building rapport, asking about their kids. You know, this is going to be in the first 15 minutes.
It sounds like there's a really powerful disarming effect in calling out both the most extremes of the truth and extreme versions of the possible truth and what the actual truth is. You know, the example I think of all the time that I learned from you is a story. Actually, I guess I owe you for it. Is a few weeks ago I was upgraded on a flight, and I called
Nice.
out the most extreme version of the scenario. I walked up to the flight attendant. I had no business. I was main cabin, and I walked up, and I can tell he's just he's looking down, not acknowledging me, and looks up. He goes, "How can I help you?" And I go, "Well, I'm not sure that you can, because I'm probably about to be the biggest pain in your ass of the entire day, and I'm going to ask you to wave a magic wand." And they
Nice.
lighten up, and I'm going to say, "Is there any way I could be upgraded?" And it goes to laughter, lightning, and they immediately said, "Well, there's no way that's going to ruin my day," right? Oh, no, that's no problem. And then in calling out the extreme version, we got to the truth, which was, I want to be upgraded. And I walk into the tunnel, no upgrade, and he shouts my name from the back of the tunnel and says, winks at me and says, "Here you go. I squeaked you in there." And so there's not only the disarming effect, but like this ability for the person, when you come at it from that angle, to call out the most extreme version of the truth, that they're going to go to the ends of the earth for you. It's so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it ends up being a lot of fun too, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you used an analogy on Andrew Huberman's podcast where you talked about losing your luggage on a flight and how the lady was in the back of the tunnel looking for your suitcase because you
Oh
came
gosh.
in with the extreme truth. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
going to inconvenience you a bit, but you say, "I'm going to ruin your day. I need you to wave a magic wand."
Yeah.
Uh, and the call out of the truth is so powerful. It sounds, but conversely, it sounds like you're frustrated. If they're frustrated, they'll go, "Yeah, I am,"
Yep.
because no one's expecting them to really meet them where they're at. How did you learn that? Because I know a lot of what you do or did in the FBI as a negotiator, and now what you teach people in business. There was a time when you were a true contrarian. Like, I think Harvard called you a manipulator, yet you kind of kicked their ass in the negotiations. So how did you figure out that this stuff works? And to that note, how did you stick to your guns with all these people pushing against you? I'm assuming in the beginning, people calling you out, calling you a manipulator.
Yeah, when I was volunteering on a suicide hotline way back when, last century, it just struck me that it wasn't just people in crisis this could be really effective with. You know, I did I'm coachable. A friend of mine once said, described me, he said, he takes initiative and he takes instruction. It sounds really simple, but not that many people take either, and fewer still take both. And to me, it's just like, I had to be that way because, when I was a kid, my father would give me a list of stuff to get done and say, go out and get it done. Not explain to me how to do it. So, I have to figure stuff out. But I'm on a suicide hotline, and I just remember thinking to myself, this is, why doesn't everybody deserve empathy? Why don't the people who report me to deserve empathy? Why don't my colleagues deserve it? Why don't even the bad guys deserve it? Maybe it's effective with them. And I just started road testing it enough and realizing the adaptation of it. And I didn't assume if a quote backfired in a moment. I didn't assume that it was a process that was wrong. My hypothesis would be I applied it inadequately. And that's one of the biggest shortcomings of this thing that used to be referred to as active listening. I hate that phrase. Now it's either proactive listening or active learning. But what are we active about? Some people like, if I do a lot, that's active. That ain't it. Because you're not learning anything. So in hostage negotiations, the rule is, it works with the bad guys, but don't try it at home. And I remember thinking, like, why wouldn't my family be deserving of empathy? So if it ain't working at home, maybe it's my application of it that's wrong. Because I had the woman that's now ex Mrs. Voss. I remember using active listening on her and having her blow her stack. And I look back on it and I thought, okay, yeah. I mean, so it was my application. It wasn't the fact that the process was wrong. It was I was applying it improperly. So I've always experimented with it. So I'm at the point of having experimented with it, dialed it in, working with ridiculously smart colleagues who immerse themselves in this, breathe it the way I do. Derek Gaughan, Jonathan Smith, Don Feiselman, all of the Sandy Hine, Troy Smith, the people on my team, like, we breathe this because it's so much fun. And on a regular basis, we're having conversations with people nobody else has, or they didn't have with anybody else. Troy's got this great story where he sits down next to a woman on an airplane, and I think she literally says to him, "Don't talk to me. I'm busy, don't talk to me." And by the time the plane has landed, they're the best of friends. And she loves him, and they're having a delightful time. And he said he almost got when he got her really talking, people started taking out their phones filming it because Troy's a really big guy, and I like big black guy, big dark skinned guy with 1,000-watt smile, sweetest guy on earth, and he always wears this big giant cowboy hat, which makes him look another foot taller. So this woman says something to him, "You're lying." And everybody missed that she said it delightfully and she wanted him to go on. And he said people around her picking up their phones like, this is a video moment. We're getting ready to see a conversation on an airplane. We're going to film this baby. So, but, he's having a conversation with her that she's so delighted with. They sit down. She's like, don't talk to me. And she's delighted with him. And that happens to us all the time because we love this stuff.
What's the crack? It's got to be close to the first thing you say after an approach like that. Don't talk to me. Okay, then what? How did he go from don't talk to me to best of friends?
Well, then your reaction to that is, I can see you don't want to be bothered by some knucklehead looks like me. And they're like, oh, you saw me. Nobody today saw me. They can't help themselves. Because, she's been hammered with people that want to talk at her and not see her. And she's had so much of it that day, if not day after day. You sit next to somebody yammering next to you on an airplane, you're reading a book, they go, what are you reading? Well, if I wanted to be asked about my book, I wouldn't have it open and I wouldn't be staring at the pages. So she's sending off signals. I don't want to be talked to. You say something to him that says, "Hey, I can see you don't want," and she's equating you, even though she doesn't know you, to all the other bozos she's run across that week. So I see you. You don't want to be bothered by some bozo that looks like me. Boom. That's understanding. That's recognition. That's seeing someone who hasn't been seen all day long.
So is it fair to say that everything, all of those exchanges we have with strangers, bosses, colleagues, romantic partners, traces back to empathy, being heard, being
So
understood?
it's just darn close. It's just darn close to yeah.
Wow. So if we know that, when I told my audience that you were coming on the show, I got well over 700 or 800 questions that people wanted to ask you, and they were just beyond excited. And a big one that kept coming up that I know you guys probably do a lot of work in now with your team at Black Swan is taking these practices and principles to the business world, specifically negotiation of compensation. This is something I make a lot of content around. I know that corporations are corporations and the goal is minimize cost and maximize revenue. Knowing that you are, no matter the value, you are a cost on the P&L in a way. They want to pay you the least they can and get you to do the best job possible. And so we should always negotiate comp, always. The answer is always no if you don't ask. And so if we know the goal is empathy and mutual understanding, how do we take the principles in your book, the principles you know and teach every day and that you use in the FBI, and negotiate that great counter offer when you get that offer letter from a job, or negotiate that big raise in our year one review? How do we really knock that out of the park with what people would think is the clear leverage holder, our boss, our potential employer?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought this up because actually I'm getting ready to a couple of weeks do a salary negotiation course online. Um, and the blackswanltd.com salary negotiation coming up. There'll be a video of it also. But empathy. All right, your initial question, empathy. And it's how does your boss see you, and how should he see you? You start with how do they see you? Cold, hard reality. Not that they see you as a commodity, they see you as selfish. You want to come in here, into my office, and you want to get paid more for doing the same amount of work. When you're asking for a raise, are you asking for additional responsibilities? Have you volunteered to take on additional responsibilities? You're saying, hey, boss, how much more can I do around here? If you don't say that, understand human nature, what they hear is you just ask to get paid more for doing the same amount of work or the
Mm.
same thing. And everybody that walks into the boss's office, you don't walk into the boss's office going like, hey, how much more can I do for nothing, for no extra pay? As a matter of fact, maybe you pay me too much. No, you go in there to ask for something. So your boss is human. Your boss is conditioned that everybody that walks through the door comes in with an ask, with their hand out. Can I have more time off? Can I work fewer hours? Can I work from home more? So, because pain in the neck getting dressed up every day, I want to work in my underwear. Let me be virtual from home with my screen off. You don't have to agree, but you got to recognize what they've been conditioned to think. So I just start that out. If you walk in with an ask, boss, same as a hotel clerk or the luggage thing. I'm just going to sound like another selfish employee. You now look fearless. You look honest. You look like a straight shooter. It doesn't make you a selfish employee. It's a recognition of how they see things. So, and also in the salary course, I'm like, all right, so what do I want the people that work for me, what do I want them to do so I can pay them more? And my contention is, it's a classic work harder, not smarter. Don't work more, work smarter. How can you get paid more for doing the same amount of work? Figure out what's more effective work. They want to, what they're trying to do is maximize revenue, minimize costs. How can you come up with an innovation where you've done something more effectively? Now you're minimizing costs. How does what you do connect to revenue? Now that's really hard, and your boss has trouble figuring that out. So the minute you start figuring that out on your boss's behalf, you've now saved them thinking time. You're minimizing costs. You're increasing the bottom line. So when you begin to think like that, number one, now you're in a whole new category. Now you're more valuable to the person you work for. This is, how do you make yourself more valuable? What do you do in the things on a daily basis that diminishes your value? Here's something that's commonly accepted. Everybody's killing them with it, themselves with this. As an employer, as a counterpart, as a colleague, I need to be able to set my watch by you. What time does work start? In my office, work starts at 9 a.m. What time does a race start? Race starts at 9 a.m. Does that mean I want you pulling up out front of the stadium at 9 a.m.? No, the gun's going off at 9. Do I need to hear you call me at 8:58 saying, I'm going to be a few minutes late? Gun's going off at 9. You've known for the last 20 to 25 minutes, maybe last half hour, you were going to be late. You waited till 2 minutes before the gun went off to let me know. So everybody in my company, we emphasize job one, put yourself in a position where people can set their watch by you. You know what we hear from people we do business with all the time? Your team is so good to work with. Now, why do they make it a point of telling us that? Because they can't set their watch by anybody else. So when you as an employee become somebody that your boss can set their watch by, you're now more trusted because you're more predictable. The boss looks up at a clock and knows, trusts the clock, it's going to be the same every time. If the boss can trust you as much as he trusts the clock, suddenly you're in a new category. You might not have to work anymore. You're more valuable to start with because you're so much more reliable. So there's all these little things that build your career. How do you make it easier for your boss to pay you more? Understand what's valuable, understand what you've done, what's valuable, understand what creates problems. Now, is that going to make them pay you? Vast majority of the time, you're going to get more money. If it doesn't, you're now that much more employable. And if you become more valuable and you don't either learn more, get more opportunity, or get paid more, because getting paid more is only one component of a job, of compensation. More opportunity, happier life, easier to get along with you, with your family, learn more. You know, Cody Sanchez says all the time, if you're not learning or you're not earning, then get out. But maybe you're not earning anymore, but you're learning so much more. Then it's still a good job. So understand what the total compensation is. Some of it is how much does the job suck the life out of you. Yeah, if you get a lot of money and you get treated like dirt, you ain't gonna stay there. So thinking about on the whole picture, what compensation is, and then stop doing the things that put friction in your life with your boss. You're going to get an awful long way. You're going to be happier and you're going to make more money.
So it sounds like the formula, if I'm hearing you, is you address on the front end, just like you always have stated, I'm going to sound like another selfish employee.
Yeah.
Address the truth neither of you wants to, or they don't want to acknowledge, but are thinking about you. And then you become abstract, albeit objective, but more abstract with what is ROI for you and for them. So ROI for you being quality of life, not just money, time back in your pocket, commute, all of these factors that people don't associate but do have a dollar value. And then tie back, if you're not in a direct revenue generating role like sales, how is what I'm doing creating ROI for this business? How is what I'm doing maximizing revenue and minimizing cost? And present all of that in a with a tightly sealed bow on top and make the ask for the additional compensation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's dead on, because if you're the type of person who thinks like that, now this is hard thinking, which makes you that much more valuable. You're going to continue to do that. Yeah, in my company now, we instituted this process called a Scrum board, where, to do, in process, basically done. We changed a couple of the categories. Our done category is now victories, because you don't want to cross stuff off your to-do list. You want to have victories for the day. You want to feel good about what you did. Then the other thing that's more highly valued now is we got a new category called discoveries. Like, what did I discover on how to do something better? And as an employee, understand there's a difference between different and better. Boss tells you to do something. I don't like to do it that way. I got a different way I like to do it. It's what I'm comfortable with. That isn't any better. You can come up with a better way to do it. Not different, but better. Now you're saving money. Now you're increasing revenue. Like, look, even if your job is to gather paper clips are a cost. How do we spend less money on paper clips while still getting the same benefit that we got from the paper clips in the first place? That's better. That's not different. Well, I don't like these kind of paper clips. I like the gold color ones because they make me feel good. That's different. So if you can wrap your mind around the difference between better and different, now you're adding value. Doesn't matter what you do. Like, you could have the most mundane job on earth. If you come up with a better way of doing it, you're more valuable. You can get paid more, and you
Yeah.
probably have to find a way to make your boss conscious of it, but not hit him in the face way. Come up for a evaluation at the end of the year. You're looking for more money. Another woman I'm a fan of, Constance Schwartz-Marine, Michael Strahan's business partner, Smack Entertainment. Most people know who Michael is. Very few people know who Con is. She said when she wants people to come in and ask for a raise, bring a list of the stuff, the improvements you made over the past year, how you made our operation better. Remind me of your value, because I'm so busy. Look, I'm a person. There's a pretty good chance I forgot or took it for granted. It's a fair thing for you to do, to come to me with a list of how you made life better around here over the past year. She's a two-way street type of person. People that work for her love to work for her, but you got to want to work. There's no tolerance for somebody who wants a job because it's, something to do. That's a necessary evil. And I love Constance's approach to that. She's like, yeah, remind me what you did around here last year. If
Yeah.
you got a boss where that doesn't do you any good, you're working in the wrong place.
Yeah. That's a fantastic approach and exactly what it should be. I think a lot of people in these situations, this can all make a lot of sense and they're learning a lot from hearing you explain this, but there's still a degree of pressure that some people just struggle to operate from. So I know you have a few very, very well-known strategies for staying calm and what someone considers sitting across from their VP to ask for more money, a very high pressure situation, or let's say you're negotiating someone's life on the other end of the phone. So you have the late night FM DJ voice to stay calm both on your end and theirs. So outside of that, and maybe explain that briefly what it is there something you like to do to keep you calm in a tense situation?
Yeah, nobody performs under pressure without practice. That's really, it's as stupid as simplest answer, and it is the reality. You got to look at practice as nutrition. Um,
Wow.
you need nutrition every day. And if I got bad nutrition one day, as long as I pick it up the next day, I'm okay. You're gonna have a day where you don't practice. you got a cheat day. If you're strictly following a diet, The Rock has a cheat day. I think Sundays he covers his pancakes with like 8 gallons of syrup and just eats
Yeah.
all kind of crazy stuff he's not supposed to eat. So if you think of practice as the nutrition for your performance in a big game, then you got to get your nutrition. It should be good overall. It doesn't have to be perfect. It pretty much ought to be kind of an everyday habit. But then, yeah, I'm using a calming, soothing, or smiling voice with the Lyft driver, with the guy in the store, the cashier. I may walk up to. I go to this. I always use the self checkout lanes, but there's always somebody hovering over there looking to help you. And you can look at that person and go like, "Yeah, it looks like you enjoy your job." If they look happy, because you got to tell them what you see. They could be frowning, looking down. Looks like it's been a tough day. This is your practice. Um, you got a bottle of booze and your self checkout, and they want to come and see your ID, and you're like, I'm another one of these annoying people that thinks that you just got to look at me from across the room. I know I'm old enough, and we all think it's insulting to show our driver's license. You get your practice on a regular routine basis, and then when you're sitting down with the boss, you're not trying something new. You're trying skills that you've test driven all the time.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I appreciate your time here more than I can really tell you. I've got one last question before we go, and we tell the people what you're working on and where they can find you. And it's a lot of people ask me to ask you this question because you've led such an impactful life and a rare life, doing what you're doing what you did, saving lives, countless probably, helping people, and now helping people in a different light that is still so impactful. So when you look back at young you, the guy that joined Kansas City PD and maybe even before, what's something you would go back and tell him to find his purpose, to find the thing that can make an impact for young people in this world that feel like they can't figure it out?
Yeah, there is stupid cliches. Follow what makes you happy. The original thought that I was just going to be a cop in the city. I'm so far from that now. Just because there was stuff that intrigued me and interested me. I followed what I enjoyed, what I was passionate about. And that ultimately is be willing to change your circumstances if you see a better fit or if the current circumstances don't fit. And I wish I could tell you one of the Harvard Business School professors who gave a talk to the students at Harvard one time. And it was basically, he quit his way to happiness. He was in one job and he wasn't happy and he quit. He didn't go like, I'm a hostage. I got to stay here. I got to pay the bills. I can't get out. And he ultimately finds himself a professor at Harvard Business School. I don't remember where he started. All I remember is he said, be willing to quit your way to happiness. I didn't quit my way to happiness. I found stuff that I was drawn to and I went after it. And I had a good time with it. And those are two different versions of the same thing. If the current circumstances maximize, I've always prized learning over earning. You ain't taking a government job to get rich. As it turns out, on the other end, I get off a plane in Vegas the other day. This guy was in coach. He says, "Hey, I saw you flying first class. What kind of job I got to get to fly first class?" And I said, "I worked my ass off for 30 years." That wasn't the answer he wanted to hear.
No.
But following my bliss, following what I loved, following what I was enthusiastic about. I hammered away at that boulder for well over 30 years. Things are pretty good now, but it was a journey that I really loved along the way. And the outcome's not, the more you, another cliche, the more you enjoy the journey, then first of all, you're going to let go of the outcome. And secondly, where you end up is going to be a lot of fun. You're going to love where you end up as soon as you enjoy the journey and let go of the outcome. You're going to have a great time.
Hmm. There's a reason cliches are cliches, and that's because they're true.
And they're true a lot.
Chris, thank you for taking the time to be here. I can't tell you what this means for me personally. I've just been such a huge fan for so long, and it's been an honor to share an hour with you. Where can the people find you? What are you working on now that you're excited about that they should go check out if they have the chance?
Yeah, the cool thing that we're doing now is we just started this new endeavor. We call it the Black Swan Negotiation Community. And so it's growing, and entry is free. And you get in, and depending upon your skill level, where you are, what you're learning, you can find some people that are sort of in the same stage as you. And you get mentored by other people that are already in and have been on the journey. And so, maybe you can't afford to come to the annual summit. Summit's going to be in the spring in Dallas. It's going to be a little under $4,000 to come. Maybe right now you can't crack that nut. You come in the community and start learning, and you're going to find before too terrible long that not only is that not going to be that expensive, but you're going to be in a position to make deals where the return on investment is phenomenal. Everybody started at zero. My friend that Even Up Law, $1 billion company, started at zero, but got into it, got immersed with it, and life becomes pretty interesting. So the community is something I'm really enthusiastic about, because the people in the community are helping each other in this endeavor, and they're having a great time doing it, evolving their lives, getting prospering financially is a secondary benefit.
Simply a side effect. Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to go check it out myself, because as much as I've enjoyed the book and just listening to you on every media outlet over the last few years, I can imagine the value in the community is no different, if not far superior. So thank you again, Chris, for your time. To everyone listening, thank you for being here. If you like the show, be sure to rate it on Spotify. If you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, drop a comment, and let me know what you thought. Mr. Voss, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Michael, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.